Nicole Guillaume with Guiding Echoes, the channel that is devoted to your spiritual and personal growth. And in today's video, I wanted to address a question that I received from one of our viewers, and that question is, I seemed to have more communication during my awakening process than now. Any reason for that? Scott, that is an excellent question. And of course, yes, there is a reason for that. So when we first begin our awakening process, you probably noticed that you had this intense feeling of oneness, right? Or maybe not so intense, but you were aware of it. You started to feel the connection that you had to the universe. And there were all these different things that started to come to you. Maybe you noticed that your senses were heightened or your intuition started to open up. And maybe you noticed that you didn't exactly resonate with your old religious spiritual belief systems, maybe a belief system that you were raised in or something that you turned to as an adult when you became older and were seeking answers. But there was something inside of you that just woke up. Hence the reason we call it the awakening, and you began seeking answers. And during that point, what happens for a lot of us is we start to get a lot of different information, right? We start to get all of these different downloads from the universe, from our guides and our angels. And slowly but surely, we start to get to this point where we're not getting those messages as often. And like Scott was asking you, well, what's the deal? What happened? Why aren't we getting those messages anymore? There's actually a pretty good reason for that. So to understand why this happens, I want you to think about school, right? Let's talk about kindergarten. Now remember, kindergarten was the time where we began to learn, maybe not our ABCs, we probably already knew those from preschool when we got into kindergarten, but we started to learn how to form words and how to write our name. We started to learn how to add and subtract. And in addition to that, we also learned about our community, right? We made a lot of different friends. And of course, we became fond of our teachers if we had a great teacher. But when you think about it, kindergarten was really the foundation. You know, it was the level of education that laid the foundation for everything else we were going to learn. Well, in the same way, our first awakening experience is setting the foundation. It's giving us the ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s. It's showing us how to put things together. And then when that happens, as we start to move forward and process all the information that's given to us, our vibration starts going up. So as our vibration goes up, we're no longer matching the level of information that was once needed or required. And so now you're no longer in spiritual kindergarten. Now you're a step or two above it. And so the reason that you're not getting more information is because you don't need it anymore. You don't need it anymore. You've risen above it. And so now you're in this period, right? It's kind of this incubation period where you start to integrate what it is that you have learned. You start to process it. One of the things that we have learned through science is that the brain needs time to absorb new information. It needs time to really create those new neural pathways and to set them in stone. And what happens is when the brain is overwhelmed with new information, it doesn't have time to create new neural pathways. It doesn't have time to absorb that new information and process it and integrate it because it's already moving on to the next thing. And so I feel that's one of the reasons why the universe and our guides and angels are so very wise in giving us a break from those downloads, because it allows our mind to process and integrate what we have already learned. So it's kind of like going back to the kindergarten analogy. Once you complete kindergarten, what happens? You graduate, right? You don't need to go back to kindergarten. So long as you passed all those tests and you turned in your homework and everything was great, you didn't need to go back and repeat it. You went on to the next level. You went up to first grade. But between kindergarten and first grade, you had the summer break, right? You had this period where you didn't go to school for a while. You had 3 or 4 months off, and it was fantastic. You probably put a lot of that information into use, and you didn't even realize it, right? As a kindergarten moving into first grade, you were reading books, you were counting out your money, you were using those skills, and it started to happen so naturally that you didn't even think about it. And that's how the spiritual world can work too. We start putting some of these spiritual processes into play, and we don't even realize that we're doing it. And then once you've had time to integrate and process that information, you're able to move on to first grade, to that next level, and then it's time for another awakening where things get a little deeper. So we don't go through just one awakening. We go through several different awakenings, and this happens as we progress through them. And just like school, every awakening can become a little more intense. It becomes a little harder because as we start to grow spiritually, we're able to absorb more information and stronger information, and we might start seeking those even harder questions to life or to spirituality. And so it's all about allowing that information to come to us during a time when we can absorb it and process it. Now, the other reason that the awakening process may stop, you may not have completed it, but it may stop and you may notice that you're not getting downloads anymore, is because you're going through something very significant and difficult in your life. You may be going through a very difficult transition. So maybe you're moving, maybe you lost a loved one, maybe you're just at a point where life feels a little hopeless and you're not sure what your next move is. Those are all situations that are very overwhelming. And so our awakening process may stop so that we have time to address those issues. If we are going through some type of transition in life that has taken a lot of our energy and a lot of our time and really causing us to be overwhelmed, imagine how much more overwhelmed we would be if we continued to receive those downloads and the information. It would be pretty hard to process because now we're trying to put our attention here on this information that we're learning, but we're also trying to get past this heavy point in our lives. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, Nicole, doesn't the spirituality give us answers and give us insight so we can get past that difficult period in our lives? Yes and no, it might. But for the most part, here's what happens. People sometimes use their spiritual life as an excuse to retreat from life. Right? They use it as a form of escape. And that's really not what spiritualism is about. Spirituality is about integrating all parts of your life together so you can live a whole, happy, and fulfilling life. Now, the third reason that we may stop receiving downloads and information after an awakening is because our guides and angels and really the universe are now giving us a choice. Right? They are giving us a choice as to whether we want to proceed down this path or whether we want to maybe turn around and kind of do our own thing. And so once again, the universe lovingly respects our free will. It is not here to force us to take one path or the other. So what the universe will do is it will kind of lay out those breadcrumbs for us to follow to a certain point. And then we may get to that fork in the road where we can decide if we want to continue to gather more information and understanding about all these amazing spiritual philosophies and spiritual thoughts and theologies. We can decide if we want to go down that path, or maybe if we have a different spiritual path that we want to discover, we can do that. Or maybe we decide, hey, you know, all of this was interesting, it was a nice ride, but this isn't for me. I'd rather take a completely path that's separate from spirituality, and that's fine too. You know, there's really no right or wrong answer there. It all has to do with where you are in your path right now. So when the awakening stops, when the information stops, you're at a point now where you can consciously decide if you want to move forward or not. And you can check out different books at your library that have to do with different spiritual beliefs. You can, of course, purchase them on Amazon. You can watch videos like this one. You start doing your own research, right? You start doing your own investigating and really answering the call of your heart, because your heart will guide you towards a spiritual belief system or spiritual topics that really speak to you, that catch your interest. And whenever that happens, it's a good indication that you're on the right path. Because I have yet to meet anyone who says, you know, I'm really into Reiki, and so I threw myself into Reiki. I read all the books, I found a mentor, I did the workshops, and after I'd thrown myself into it for years, I still can't do Reiki. I absolutely don't even know what I'm doing. That doesn't happen. So whenever you feel drawn into something, that is most likely the path you're supposed to be on. So as you answer the invitation of your intuition to explore all these new avenues, you'll start to notice that the right bits of information start to come to you at the right time, and usually not before. And if it does come to you before you're ready, what's going to happen is, let's say you'll open up a book on Reiki, since apparently that's the analogy I feel like using right now. So you open up this book on Reiki, and you just get to a point where your brain's not comprehending it anymore. You're like, I don't even know what this means. And so maybe you get a little discouraged or frustrated, and you put the book aside, right? And a few months go by, and you pick up that very same book, maybe for a different reason, and you start reading it, and you're like, and you get to the same point you were before, and you're like, oh my gosh, this information is astounding. How did I not know this? You just need a time to process. You need a time to get there. And when that information gets to us before we're ready, we can't even absorb it in the first place. We just need to get to a certain place before the universe can provide us with the information that is needed so we can absorb it correctly, process it, understand it, and of course use it, because what good is information if you don't understand it and if you don't use it, right? So just remember that wherever you are on your path is perfect for you right now. So in this video, we have covered 3 different reasons why an awakening process may stop, may lag, or really why you may not get as much information when the initial awakening process comes to a halt. But I'm curious to know, do you have other ideas or theories as to why this happens? And then for those of you who did go through that period where you had your awakening, there was a moment or season of silence, and then you moved on to the next level, well, we'd like to hear your stories too, because they serve as a source of purpose, enlightenment, inspiration, and encouragement for those who may be stuck in those middle grounds right now. So please feel free to put your comments and questions in the comment section down below. And guys, be sure that you read those comment sections down below, because there's a lot that we can learn from each other. So remember, this is a community. We are here to grow with one another, to encourage one another as we seek a path that really speaks to our hearts. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, I would like to welcome you to the Guiding Echoes community, and I'd also like to invite you to subscribe to this channel so you can be notified when I release new videos in the future. Also, if you are a patron through Patreon, I would like to thank you so much for your support. It is through the support of viewers just like you that I'm able to continue these work and put these videos out. If you'd like to learn how you can help to support this channel, please visit patreon.com/Nicole. Or if you'd like to schedule an intuitive session with me, please visit my website at guidingechoes.com. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.